Hello everyone and welcome to the part 3 of the game art tutorial. The first episode, if you're interested, was on modeling this can. The second one was on UVing this can, very basic, and this one we're going to take it into Substance Painter and texture it. So first things first, I'm going to go into object mode, and what we want to do, just to make it easier for when we bring this into Unreal Engine later, I'm going to reposition the pivot point so that it's in the center of the world on this grid. So a way to do that is if I press D, this allows us to move the pivot point. If I hold V and then move, it will snap, and move my mouse all the way down, it will snap to the bottom vertexes. Right? And I press W to get back out of that mode so we can move it again. And then if I hold X and move up, it will be in the world grid position. See, that's quite confusing. So D to move the pivot point, V to snap it to a vertex, W to go back to the move tool, and X to snap it to the world grid position. So I'm just going to get that back to where it should be, like so. And now we're going to export this for Substance Painter. So I'm going to go File, with this selected, Export Selection. It'll pop up with a window, so just save it wherever is convenient. I'm going to call it Soda Can. Export. Now you want to open up Substance Painter, and we're going to go File, New. Ignore the template. Just where it says File, select your file. So I'm going to find my soda can, where I've saved that. There we go, soda can. So you see sodacan.fbx. Document resolution, leave that at 1024. You can leave all of these, for this one, you can leave all of these settings how they are. And you just press OK. And now you'll see we have our soda can in Substance Painter. I'll just reset my UI so it's the same as yours. There you go, your UI should look something like this. If not, press Window, Reset UI. Now, a few keys, hotkeys that help you is F1, F2, and F3. These switch between your UVs, just your mesh, and then your UVs and your mesh. So, now that we're in here, firstly we want to go into texture set settings, and I'm going to set this to, we'll leave it at 1024, but normally for game art, this sort of prop would be 256, or maybe even 128, most likely 256, 512, depending on what you're working on, because it's such a small prop. So I'm going to scroll down in texture set settings to where it says bake mesh maps, and we're just going to leave this as 512, and we're just going to bake these. We don't need the ID map because we didn't do that. We're just going to bake these mesh maps. So bake 1001 mesh maps. There we go. So now we have all of these. So if I scroll down here, we can have a look. Ambient Occlusion, for example. See the shadows. There'll be a curvature. This just will help when we're doing, it's not as obvious because it's 512, but it's going to help when we're adding layers. So if we go back to material here, we are first, what we're going to do is go into layers, and we want to add a Coca-Cola texture from the internet. So I went on Google, I just typed in Coke can texture, and the exact a million textures come up. So if you type that, And once you save that somewhere on your computer, on your desktop or something, and then in Substance Painter you press this button here. You can also drag it in, but another way is import resources, this button here. And then add resource. So got my Coke can here, and then I'm going to select this to a texture, import resources to current session, or if you want it to stay, you can keep it in the shelf, but just for this session. And you'll see we have a texture here, Coke can. So to add this, how we're going to do it is I'm going to add a fill layer, which is this one, add a fill layer. And I'm going to scroll down to base color and just click and drag and drop this texture in. Now you see this is covering everything. It's not working out how you want it to, but it's easy fix. So firstly, we're going to scroll up and see where it says UV wrap repeat. We want to put that to none, because if I shrink this down, you'll see it repeats the texture endlessly unless we turn this off. So none. Now I'm going to just using these line up the texture where we'd like it. There we go, we have a base color of our Coke can. Now, the way Coke cans work is they're not a sticker on the top like some cans do it. I have one in front of me here. So it's actually more part of the metal. So because of that, we're going to scroll down to where it has metallic and put it to 1. So there we go, we see we've got a metal Coke can here. Now, we still need to do the silver on the bottom part and the top of this can. So we're going to add another layer. I'm going to delete this previous one. I'm going to name this one by double clicking label, and I'm just going to add another layer, and we'll call this layer silver, as it's like a silver metal. We can pull this underneath, and you'll see this layer is now on top of the silver layer. If I put this to blue, for example, you can see here it's above, here it's below, just like Photoshop. So what we're going to do is we could use a material. So I'm going to scroll down in your shelf here to where it says materials, and then we'll just find a material for this. So maybe silver pure could possibly use. We could drag this into material mode here, and you see it's already looking a bit more like a Coke can, like that. So what we still need to do is we need to put the details on the top of the Coke can, as it's obviously not flat like this. So to do this, I'm going to use the same picture that I used as reference for the modeling. If you're struggling to find which one it is, I'm going to bring it in. You'll be able to find something extremely similar online. So if I'm just going to drag and drop this into my shelf, I'm going to call it a texture, import to current session. So now we have the texture here. So if I create a new fill layer, I'm going to just drag this into base color, and then I'm going to resize it to the top of the can. Obviously we're going to have to do a bit of work on it, as it does already have a cap on top, like so. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to mask this so that the texture only applies where we want it, because even if I do the same thing with UV unwrap and change this to none, it is still going to cover some parts because of the UVs here. So we're just going to right click on this new fill layer. I'll call it top. Right click on it, add a black mask. And we're just going to, using this button here, polygon fill, we're just going to go to UV chunk fill, select this, and there you go. The texture is on top like that. Now, as good as that looks, this obviously isn't right, because for starters, it's not as metallic as the actual metal parts we have, and we want this to have some height to it. So in order to do that, firstly I'm going to go into the layer and turn the metallic on. I'm going to slightly correct the color, as this is not the same color as our silver. So I'm going to right click on this, and we can add, let's think, possibly a levels, and just correct this ever so slightly. There we go, just a little bit closer. And now we need to add the height in. So this might be a little bit tricky, but it shouldn't be too hard. We're just going to have to paint along these lines as best we can. It doesn't have to be accurate as it's such a small prop, and give them a little bit of height. So new fill layer, height 1, add a black mask, and then on top of that black mask we want to add a paint layer. So this will now allow us to paint onto the cam. So what we want essentially is to follow these lines along like this, like so. I'll do it again a little bit neater, and then when we go into this and turn off the color, metal, roughness, normal, put the height up a little bit, you'll see we've got a little bit of height coming onto the texture here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this paint layer and redo it quickly, neatly. Add paint. So a cool way we can do this is by using this lazy mouse option here. And essentially what this does is, as we draw, if this wasn't ever so far behind, it's easier here. It follows just behind our mouse, gives us easier and smoother curves as we go. Once again, it doesn't have to be perfect. There we go, something like that. And then I'm going to just make the brush size a little bit smaller so we can do this part here. Once again, just draw around it. There we go. And this piece we want to create a new, wrong layer, sorry, a new fill layer, height 2, same thing, add a black mask, right click, add black mask, right click, add paint. We're going to just draw in a line here, maybe a little bit bigger. There we go. And we'll turn off these and just lower the height a little bit. So there we go. Now we have our Coke can, and that will be ready to be exported and put on into a scene in Unreal Engine and probably barely ever be noticed as it will be so far away. But you have nice little details here, and if you were to up the texture resolution to 2K, it would still hold up. Even if you dropped it down very low, as most likely it would be used, 256, something like that, it's hold up as a coat cam, very obvious. Okay, so next video will show you how to export this, export the textures, bring the mesh and the texture into Unreal Engine. So catch you at that one.